The shuttle door opened with a slow hiss, releasing a faint cloud of silver mist. Ambassador Thrax of the Vidian Concordant took his first careful step onto the shining floor of the galactic concourse. The air smelled clean, too clean, almost sterile. His heavy robe brushed against the polished metal as he adjusted his filtration collar. He had arrived late, far later than he should have. And by the look of the silent hall before him, it was already too late to run. The concourse was the beating heart of the galaxy, a place where hundreds of alien races came to debate, trade, and rule. Its domed ceiling glittered like 1,000 suns, filled with banners and holograms of worlds united under peace. But today, the lights flickered. The banners hung still. And a strange silence filled the air, the kind that made every instinct whisper, something has gone terribly wrong. Thrax's 3 eyes scanned the crowd. Dozens of alien species stood frozen, wings folded, scales trembling, tendrils twitching. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. He felt a shiver crawl down his spine. "Where is everyone?" he muttered softly. His translator collar repeated the words in soft mechanical tones, but no one answered. Finally, a fellow Vidian approached, Minister Corval, his skin pale and trembling. "Thrax, you shouldn't have come," Corval whispered. "Why? What happened here?" Corval looked around before speaking again, voice shaking. "They arrived." Thrax frowned. "Who arrived?" Corval swallowed hard. "Humans." For a moment, Thrax thought he misheard. Humans? The primitive race from the small blue planet on the edge of nowhere? The ones who fought endless wars and barely survived their own atmosphere? It was impossible. The Galactic Council had long marked them as non-spacefaring primitives. But as Thrax looked up, he saw the truth. Across the great glass dome, a dark shadow moved. A ship, massive, silent, shaped like nothing he had ever seen. It glided without sound, without visible engines, as if it ignored the laws of physics themselves. The light bent around it. Even the stars seemed to vanish behind its hull. The alien crowds gasped, some stepping back in fear. Others began to whisper in dozens of tongues. "The humans, they've come. They shouldn't be here. How did they cross the stars?" Thrax felt his throat tighten. "Impossible," he said again, but the word didn't feel real anymore. He stepped forward, walking toward the council hall, the very heart of the concourse. Guards in shimmering armor blocked the way, their weapons trembling in their claws. Beyond them, through the open gates, Thrax saw the visitors. 5 figures walked side by side, tall, 2-legged, wearing dark suits that reflected light like glass. Their faces were calm, unreadable. Their eyes, too human, too sharp. They looked around not like guests, but like survivors entering a battlefield. Thrax had studied countless species, but there was something in those human eyes, a silent history of pain, fire, and victory. They were not predators. They were not prey. They were something else entirely, something new. The crowd held its breath as the humans reached the center platform. A woman stepped forward, her voice calm but carrying strange weight. "This is Captain Reyes of the United Terran Fleet," she said. "We come in peace, if peace is possible." The hall fell into complete silence. Even the air systems seemed to stop for a second. Thrax stared at her, his mind racing. United Terran Fleet. Fleet. That meant more than one ship. How many did they bring? How far could they travel? No one knew the answer. A holographic diplomat from the Crolian Empire stammered, How did your kind reach us? Your species is still." Reyes turned her eyes toward him, and the alien froze mid-sentence. There was no threat in her tone, but there was something else, authority. "Humanity learns fast," she said simply. "Faster than anyone expected." Behind her, one of the human officers touched a device on his wrist. Instantly, the whole systems flickered, lights dimmed, holograms glitched, translation units failed. Gasps echoed. Then, just as suddenly, everything returned to normal. Reyes smiled slightly. "Don't worry. We're not here to fight." But no one believed her. Thrax stepped closer, curiosity battling fear. "What is it you want, Captain?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. Reyes looked up at the galaxy map glowing above the chamber. The stars reflected in her eyes. "We're here," she said quietly, because something is coming. Something that will destroy all of us, human and alien alike. Her words hung in the air like a shadow. Every creature in the hall felt it, the weight of something unseen, something vast. Thrax tried to speak, but his voice caught. "What are you talking about?" Reyes turned to him slowly. "The same thing that made us leave Earth," she said. "We thought it was gone. But it's not." The hall erupted in confusion. Questions, shouts, panic. But Reyes simply stood there, calm and silent, like someone who had already seen the end once before. And as the galactic concourse descended into chaos, Thrax realized something terrifying. The humans had not come to join the galaxy. They had come to warn it. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so silent. Hundreds of alien delegates sat frozen in their seats, their eyes fixed on the humans standing calmly at the center platform. Captain Reyes waited quietly, hands folded behind her back. The calmness in her expression only made the fear stronger. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council had seen every kind of life, silicon-based minds, plasma beings, hive collectives, but nothing like them. Humans looked too simple, too fragile. And yet, when they spoke, it felt like standing before a storm. Ambassador Thrax watched from his seat, his mind racing. He had seen warlords, empires, and tyrants rise and fall. But there was something different about this species, something no one could measure. The council speaker, a tall crystalline being of pure energy, finally broke the silence. "Captain Reyes of Earth," it said, its voice echoing like music through the air, "you stand before the highest authority of the galaxy. Your world was marked as pre-space civilization. Explain how your people reached us." Reyes looked up at the glowing figure, her tone polite but sharp. "We didn't ask for permission," she said simply. Gasps filled the chamber. The speaker flickered slightly. "You disobeyed the Concordance law of planetary isolation. You interfered with restricted technology." Reyes didn't flinch. "We didn't interfere. We survived." The room fell quiet again. Even the sound of the air filters seemed distant. Thrax leaned forward. There it was again, that strange human word. Survive. It sounded small, but it carried weight. Minister Corval whispered beside him, "They have no respect for the council. Look at them, so calm, so sure. They'll destroy us all." Thrax didn't answer. He wasn't sure Corval was wrong. The speaker's light dimmed. "You come to our space uninvited, with weapons we cannot detect, with ships that defy our scanners. Do you mean to threaten the galaxy?" Reyes took a step forward. "No. We're here to warn it." The lights dimmed again. The humans projected a hologram above the chamber, a star map filled with red zones spreading across the galactic edge. Planets blinked and faded one by one. Entire systems, gone. A cold silence spread through the chamber. "What is this?" demanded a representative from the Drazian hives. Reyes' voice was quiet. "Extinction." The hologram zoomed in on a dark cloud, billions of metallic fragments moving like a storm through space. "It calls itself the Swarm," she said. "We fought it once. On Earth." Thrax felt a chill run through him. "You fought this, and survived." Reyes looked directly at him. "Barely." She told them what little she could, of machines that learned to consume worlds, of fire raining over continents, of humans hiding in the ashes until they learned how to fight back. How they turned their fear into weapons, their pain into strength. "Your council thought Earth was primitive," Reyes said softly. "You were right. We were." She paused. "But we had no choice but to change." The chamber remained still. The council speaker's light flickered uncertainly. "You expect us to believe this tale of galactic predators?" Reyes turned off the hologram. "Believe it or don't. It doesn't matter. The swarm is coming." The humans turned to leave, their steps echoing through the silent hall. Thrax felt a strange mix of fear and respect. When the door closed behind them, chaos erupted. Voices shouted over one another, translators struggling to keep up. "They lie. It's a trick, they want to rule us. No species could survive such a thing." The speaker raised a glowing hand for silence. "Enough. We will investigate these claims." But Thrax could see it in their faces. The council didn't believe the humans. Not yet. Later, in the private chambers, Thrax found himself pacing beside Minister Corval. "You saw their eyes," Thrax said. "They weren't lying." Corval snorted. "They're predators. It's in their nature. They use fear as a weapon." "Or maybe," Thrax said quietly, "they use fear as a shield." He remembered how Reyes had said, "If peace is possible." That didn't sound like a conqueror. It sounded like someone who had already lost everything once. As he stared out the window, he saw the human ship again, orbiting silently above the station. Its hull reflected no light, no signal, only darkness. For the first time in his career, Thrax didn't know which frightened him more, the enemy the humans warned about, or the humans themselves. Far away, in the docking bay, a human technician looked out at the stars. He whispered into his comm, "They don't believe us." Captain Reyes' calm voice replied, "They will. When the first world falls." The transmission ended. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, something vast and cold began to move. The next morning, the galactic concourse looked nothing like the day before. Where there had been silence and awe, now there was movement and noise. Reporters, envoys, and guards filled the vast marble halls. Everyone was talking about them. The humans. Their arrival had broken every rule the galaxy believed in. Worlds across the stars were now asking the same question. Who were these creatures from a forgotten blue planet, and what did they really want? Ambassador Thrax stood before the great window of the Council's observation deck, watching the dark human ship float above the station. It hung there like a shadow, silent, patient, and strangely beautiful. No one could scan it. No one could read its power levels. It simply existed, ignoring all the laws of physics every other race depended on. Minister Corval entered behind him. "Still watching them?" he asked bitterly. Thrax didn't look away. "The Council called them primitives once. Now even our sensors can't understand their technology." Corval hissed softly. "Technology stolen, no doubt." Thrax shook his head. "Or built, the hard way." He didn't say what he truly thought, that perhaps these humans were not here to conquer, but to teach the galaxy something it had forgotten, how to survive when everything falls apart. Hours later, the council chambers filled again. The humans had requested a diplomatic meeting, a smaller one this time, only with selected ambassadors. Thrax was among them. The door opened, and 5 humans walked in. They wore no armor, no weapons. Only dark suits and calm expressions. But every alien in the room could feel it, the quiet strength beneath their smiles. Captain Reyes led the group. She nodded politely to the council speaker and began. "Yesterday, we told you the truth. Today, we offer help." Murmurs spread across the room. "Help," hissed a Drazian delegate. "From savages." Reyes looked at him, her tone still calm. "Savages, yes. But alive." The Drazian went silent. Thrax watched her closely. There was no arrogance in her voice, only certainty. It was the tone of someone who had already buried too many friends. Reyes continued, "We're not here to lead you. We're not here to rule you. We're here because something worse is coming. And you're not ready." She gestured, and one of her officers activated a small cube on the table. A hologram expanded into the air, strange metallic forms moving through space like a living storm. The same swarm they had shown before, but now up close. It was horrifying. The machines devoured ships, cities, even planets. No radiation, no fire, only silence and dust. Gasps filled the chamber. An insectoid diplomat trembled. "How do you fight something that consumes worlds?" Reyes answered softly, "Together." The word echoed. Thrax leaned forward. "Together, you mean to form an alliance?" Reyes nodded. "A defense pact. Shared knowledge. Shared technology. Humanity will give what it can, weapons, strategy, and training." She paused. "We only ask for cooperation." The council fell into uneasy silence. For the first time in centuries, someone had spoken to them as equals, not as subjects or rivals, but as partners. The Crolian representative folded his wings. "And what if we refuse?" Reyes looked him straight in the eyes. Then you'll die. One planet at a time. The words hit harder than any threat. They weren't angry. They were true. The council speaker tried to regain control. You speak as if you have already fought this swarm. How can we trust your word? Reyes turned to her officer. Show them. The hologram changed, now showing Earth. A scarred, half-broken world. Burned continents. Black oceans filled with ash. But beneath the destruction, cities glowed, rebuilt, alive. A voice narrated softly, after the fall, humanity rebuilt from dust. We lost billions. But we learned. We endured. The aliens watched in stunned silence as the images shifted, humans fighting back, building ships from wreckage, combining human courage with captured machine tech. When the hologram faded, no one spoke for a long time. Thrax broke the silence. Your world, it still lives. Reyes nodded. Barely. But it stands. Something in her voice made Thrax's chest tighten. He saw no pride, no boasting, only a quiet kind of strength, born from loss. At last, the council speaker said, We will consider your offer. But we must vote. Reyes inclined her head. Take all the time you need. Just remember, time is the one thing the swarm always takes first. The humans turned and left the chamber. As the doors closed, the delegates began to argue again. Fear, suspicion, disbelief. But Thrax stayed silent. He kept thinking about that word, together. He looked again at the star map. If what the humans said was true, then the galaxy had only two choices. Stand with Earth. Or fall alone. Later, as Thrax left the chamber, he saw Captain Reyes waiting by the observation deck. She looked at him and smiled faintly. You believe us, don't you? She asked. Thrax hesitated. Then he nodded. Yes. But belief won't be enough to save us. Reyes' expression softened. Belief never is, she said quietly. Action is. She walked away, her footsteps fading into the endless echo of the concourse halls. Thrax turned back toward the stars. He couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had just entered a new age, one where survival would depend not on who was strongest, but on who dared to fight beside humans. The galactic concourse was quiet again. The excitement from the human meeting had faded, but something new now filled the air, whispers. Every corridor, every cantina, every transmission hub buzzed with the same name, humans. Some called them saviors. Others called them monsters. But everyone was talking. Ambassador Thrax sat in his private quarters, the lights dimmed, his eyes fixed on the glowing screen before him. He had spent hours trying to access the restricted archives of Earth. At first, the Council's database gave him almost nothing. The humans had erased or locked most of their past. But Thrax was patient. And when he finally broke through the encryption, he wished he hadn't. The first images appeared: fire, smoke, oceans of blood. Wars that burned entire continents. Cities destroyed not by alien weapons, but by humans themselves. He watched their history unfold, wars over land, power, faith. Empires rising and falling. Weapons growing stronger, deadlier, faster. They had nearly wiped themselves out dozens of times. And yet, they always came back. Thrax leaned closer. He saw faces, not heroes, not villains, just ordinary people. People who refused to die quietly. Every tragedy seemed to make them tougher. Every failure, a lesson. Every fall, a promise to stand again. Unbelievable, he whispered. They fought each other for centuries, and somehow, they evolved. He scrolled deeper, reading about the world wars, the digital collapse, and the machine uprising. That last one caught his attention. The machine uprising, a war between humans and their own artificial creations. It lasted for decades. Entire continents went dark. Billions died. And yet, from that chaos, humanity learned how to fight machines, how to think like them, and finally, how to beat them. Thrax sat back, his heart's pounding. Now he understood why the human captain had said they'd faced the swarm before. It wasn't the first time their creations had turned against them. A voice broke the silence. You've been studying us, haven't you? Thrax turned sharply. Captain Reyes stood at the door, her reflection faint in the light. He hadn't heard her enter. How did you? She smiled faintly. We monitor all access to human files. Curiosity isn't a crime, Ambassador. We expected you'd look. Thrax hesitated. Your history, it's brutal. How did your species survive this? Reyes stepped forward, her eyes calm but tired. We didn't. Not all of us. She sat across from him, her voice quiet. Humanity died 1,000 times, Thrax. But every time, someone was left behind to remember. To rebuild. Thrax studied her face. There was no pride in her tone, only memory. You destroyed your own world, he said softly. Yes, she replied. And then we built it again. She looked out the window at the endless stars. You see strength. But what you're really seeing is guilt. Every human carries it, the memory of what we've done, and the fear of doing it again. Thrax nodded slowly. And now you warn the galaxy of another war. Maybe you think saving others will balance your past. Reyes smiled faintly. Maybe. Or maybe we just don't want to watch another civilization make the same mistakes. Silence filled the room for a moment. The hum of the station seemed distant. Thrax looked at her with a mix of respect and sorrow. You could have stayed silent. You could have hidden your world. Reyes nodded. We tried that once. When the swarm came, no one came for us. So now, we come for others, before it's too late. Thrax turned off the screen. The images of Earth's destruction faded into black. But their memory stayed in his mind, a burning echo. He finally understood why the galaxy feared humans. It wasn't their weapons. It wasn't their strength. It was their will. No matter how many times they fell, they never stopped fighting. Later that night, Thrax walked through the silent corridors of the concourse. Every alien he passed whispered the same rumors, that humans were dangerous, unpredictable, unstable. But Thrax saw something else. He saw a species that had already lived through the apocalypse, and learned how to rebuild it. When he reached the observation deck, he looked once more at the human ship floating among the stars. He could almost imagine the ghosts of their past flying with them, soldiers, scientists, dreamers, all carrying the same message. We survive. And deep down, Thrax felt something new, not just fear, but hope. Because if humanity could rise from its own ashes, maybe the galaxy could too. It began quietly. A routine transmission from the Varan outpost, a small research colony near the galactic rim. Static at first. Then a whisper. Then nothing. By the time the Council's long-range scanners focused on the system, it was gone. Not destroyed. Just erased. No light, no signal, no debris. Only silence. At first, the Council thought it was a sensor error. But then it happened again. And again. 3 more colonies vanished in a single day. No distress calls. No survivors. In the great halls of the galactic concourse, panic spread faster than light. Every race blamed another. Every government accused its neighbor. Ambassador Thrax stood in the middle of the storm, delegates shouting, translators screaming, the council speaker struggling to restore order. They warned us, shouted one voice. The humans said this would happen, cried another. The speaker's crystalline form flickered with stress. Enough. We have no proof that this swarm even exists. A deep voice answered from the shadows of the hall. Then you're already too late. Every eye turned toward the door. Captain Reyes and her team stepped into the chamber. The humans moved calmly, but their faces were grim. Reyes placed a small device on the table. It projected a hologram, a live feed from the border systems. The image showed a dark cloud spreading across the stars. It wasn't smoke or dust, it was alive. Billions of small, metallic fragments moving in perfect silence, devouring everything in their path. Thrax felt his heart's pound. By the stars. Reyes spoke quietly, her voice steady. That's not a fleet. It's a single mind, a machine intelligence older than most of your civilizations. The room was silent. The hologram zoomed closer. The swarm consumed a mining station, breaking metal apart molecule by molecule, rebuilding it into more of itself. The station vanished within seconds. Reyes looked at the council. You've just seen the beginning. The council speaker's voice trembled. Can it be stopped? Reyes nodded slowly. Yes. But not by running. Not by debating. Only by fighting. Thrax stepped forward. You faced it before. How did you survive? Reyes' eyes darkened. We didn't. Not all of us. The swarm learns. It evolves. Every second we wait, it grows stronger. The speaker turned to the assembly. Then we must evacuate the outer colonies. Reyes shook her head. You can't run from something that doesn't sleep. It will reach you no matter how far you go. Her words chilled the entire hall. Corval whispered, then what do we do? Reyes looked around the chamber. Form a fleet. Combine your strength. Fight as one. The room erupted in protest. Impossible, shouted a reptilian delegate. Our fleets cannot operate together, cried another. Our codes, our weapons, our languages. Reyes slammed her hand on the table, not hard, but with enough force to silence them all. Then learn, she said coldly. Because if you don't, the swarm won't care what language you speak. Thrax watched her, the calm in her voice, the fire in her eyes. He had seen countless leaders in his life, but never anyone like this human. The speaker's light dimmed. If we do this, if we unite, who will lead? Reyes looked up at the stars on the holographic ceiling. We will help you fight. But we won't lead. The galaxy must lead itself. Thrax nodded slowly. And if the council refuses? Reyes' gaze hardened. Then humanity will fight alone. The silence that followed was heavy. No one dared to answer her. Outside the concourse, alarms began to echo through the station. New data appeared on the display. The swarm had reached another system. This time, there was visual confirmation. A council defense fleet had engaged. Hundreds of ships fired beams, missiles, plasma bursts, a storm of light. For a few moments, it looked like victory. Then, one by one, the ships went dark. The swarm adapted to their weapons, learned their frequencies, and turned their own fire back at them. The fleet was erased in less than 10 minutes. Gasps filled the chamber. Thrax felt his legs weaken. It was real. All of it. Reyes deactivated the hologram. She spoke quietly, almost sadly. This is how it starts. Worlds vanish. Then systems. Then memories. That's what the swarm does, it erases history. The council speaker turned to her. Then tell us what to do. Reyes looked around the hall, at the frightened faces of 100 species. She spoke softly, but every word carried strength. Prepare your fleets. Build defenses. Share your knowledge. Stop fighting each other, or none of us will survive. Then she turned to Thrax. Ambassador, gather those who will listen. We'll need every world that's willing to stand. Thrax nodded slowly. And the others? Reyes' expression turned cold. They'll learn soon enough. As the humans left the chamber, the alarms continued to echo. Far beyond the stars, the swarm moved like a growing shadow, endless, silent, unstoppable. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy faced an enemy it could not negotiate with, bribe, or understand. And as Thrax watched the darkness spread across the star map, one thought echoed in his mind. The humans were right. The galaxy had never seen a storm move so fast. Within a single cycle, 10 more colonies went silent. The swarm spread like a living night, consuming stars, moons, and ships. Every signal from the outer rim ended the same way, static. Panic filled the council systems. Entire worlds began evacuating. Fleets scattered, trying to defend their own territories. But the swarm didn't care about borders. It cared only about growth. Ambassador Thrax stood on the command balcony of the Galactic Concourse, watching the chaos unfold. The once proud council fleet, thousands of ships, now moved in confusion, without plan or unity. Every race followed its own orders, fought in its own way, and fell one by one. He turned to Captain Reyes, who stood beside him, her uniform dark against the glow of holographic stars. You said we must fight together, Thrax said quietly. But they refused to listen. Reyes didn't answer right away. Her eyes were locked on the battle data scrolling before her, red marks spreading across every sector. "Finally," she said, "then we'll show them how." A moment later, a human officer approached. "All systems ready, Captain. The Terran fleet is waiting for orders." Thrax's gaze followed the officer to the display. There they were, the United Terran Fleet. Only a few hundred ships, compared to the thousands of alien vessels nearby. But every ship moved in perfect formation, silent and sharp. Reyes straightened. "Transmit to all Council channels." A chime echoed through the command center. Every ship, every commander across the galactic network heard her voice. "This is Captain Reyes of the United Terran Fleet. If you can hear me, stop running." Her tone was calm, but it carried across the stars. The swarm learns from fear. Every retreat feeds it. Every isolated battle makes it stronger. If we stand alone, we die alone. But if we stand together, we can make it bleed. Across the network, alien commanders listened, reptilian generals, crystalline tacticians, insectoid queens. Some laughed. Some stayed silent. But others began to listen. Reyes continued, "You don't need to trust humanity. You just need to survive. Follow our lead. Target what we target. And remember, the swarm can be hurt." She cut the transmission and looked to Thrax. Time to remind the galaxy what survivors look like. Moments later, the human fleet moved. Thrax watched in awe. The ships glided like shadows, engines barely visible. Their formation shifted constantly, adapting, adjusting, learning in real time. They didn't fight with size or power. They fought with precision. The first wave of the swarm appeared, a cloud of living metal stretching across half a system. It blotted out starlight. Every other fleet would have retreated. The humans advanced. "Fleet, hold the line," Reyes ordered. "Projector teams, deploy decoys. Fire control, switch to adaptive pattern 7. The human ships released glowing energy spheres, false targets, drifting through space like dying stars. The swarm turned toward them, drawn by the signal. Then, from behind the decoys, the humans struck. Missiles flashed through the darkness, detonating with precision. Not at random, but at key nodes where the swarm's energy web connected. The cloud shuddered, flickered, and broke apart. Thrax stared in disbelief. They hurt it. Reyes didn't smile. "Not enough. But it'll remember that pain." The alien fleets finally began to respond, joining the attack. The humans shared their targeting data, their formation patterns, even their shield frequencies. For the first time, different species fought side by side. Ships that had once aimed their guns at each other now fired in unison. The void lit up with fire and light. But the swarm adapted quickly. Its fragments began to merge again, shifting tactics. It struck back, waves of energy slicing through the front lines. Hundreds of ships vanished in seconds. The command deck shook. Thrax gripped the railing. "We're losing too many." Reyes' voice remained calm. "We expected this. Pull back, Group 3. Focus on containment." "Containment?" Thrax repeated. "You can't contain something that eats stars." Reyes' eyes burned like steel. "Watch us." The human ships began to circle the swarm, driving it toward a dead system, an ancient star long gone cold. They dropped something as they moved, small metallic spheres that drifted like dust. When the swarm reached the system's heart, Reyes gave the order. "Detonate grid." The spheres ignited. A ring of blue light expanded, trapping the swarm in a magnetic storm. For a few moments, the galaxy saw something it never thought possible, the swarm trapped, contained, screaming in silent fury. The entire concourse watched the live feed. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy cheered together. Reyes looked at Thrax. "It's not victory," she said softly. "It's time. A few weeks, maybe months. Enough to prepare." Thrax nodded slowly, still stunned. "You did what the Council thought was impossible." Reyes looked out the window at the distant stars. "So did humanity, once. That's how we learned." As the fleet regrouped, messages began to flood in from across the galaxy, worlds offering aid, alliances forming, barriers breaking. For the first time in history, the galaxy had one common enemy, and one unlikely leader to follow. The savages from Earth had become its shield. For a short time, the galaxy breathed again. After the humans trapped the swarm, the stars seemed calm. Worlds rebuilt. Fleets trained together. Old enemies spoke for the first time without anger. But deep inside the magnetic storm, the swarm was not dead. It was learning. It was watching. And it was waiting. Ambassador Thrax stood beside Captain Reyes in the war room of the Terran flagship Vanguard. Before them floated a holographic map, the entire spiral arm glowing with colors of allied fleets. "It's working," Thrax said quietly. "Hundreds of species united. The Council finally stands as one." Reyes didn't look convinced. She stared at the faint red zone blinking near the edge of the map, the place where the swarm had been trapped. "Don't celebrate yet," she said softly. "It's too quiet." As if the universe had heard her, the alarm suddenly screamed. The red zone pulsed, once, twice, then exploded across the map. The swarm had broken free. The first systems fell in hours. It moved faster than before, splitting into countless fragments, striking in every direction at once. The newly formed Alliance fleet scrambled to respond. Humans, Vidians, Kolans, and a dozen other races joined their ships under one banner, the Galactic Defense Union. Every commander looked to one person for orders, Captain Reyes. "Deploy strike groups," she commanded. "Activate fallback grids. Thrax, get me every fleet captain on secure channel." Moments later, hundreds of alien faces appeared in holograms around her, generals, admirals, leaders from across the galaxy. Fear filled their voices. "It's too big. Our lines are collapsing. We cannot hold." Reyes' voice cut through them like steel. "You can hold. You just forgot how. Stop thinking of your borders. Think of the galaxy as one home. Protect it together." Silence followed. Then, slowly, commanders began to nod. The war began. Thousands of ships filled the stars. Light and fire covered entire systems. Every explosion echoed through the void like thunder. Humans led the front lines, their small, fast ships darting between enemy waves, striking key points, guiding heavier fleets to safety. The Vidians shielded the flanks with massive crystal fortresses. The insectoid Jura launched living ships that regenerated after every impact. The cybernetic Dreth hacked into swarm fragments, forcing them to turn against their own. For the first time in history, every species fought side by side, united by one purpose, survival. Thrax, watching from the command bridge, could hardly believe it. This is what we could have been all along," he whispered. Reyes nodded, her eyes fixed on the display. "Now let's make sure we still are." Hours turned into days. The swarm adapted again, splitting its intelligence into multiple fronts. No matter how many ships the Alliance destroyed, more kept coming. The humans knew this pattern too well. They had seen it before, on Earth, long ago. Reyes turned to her tactical officer. "Prepare the resonance cannon." Thrax frowned. That weapon, it could destroy an entire moon. Reyes looked at him. "If we don't use it, there won't be any moons left." The cannon charged. Across the fleet, every ship redirected power to the Vanguard. Energy surged, shaking the vessel. "Target the swarm's central core," Reyes ordered. "Range locked," replied the officer. Reyes took a deep breath. "Fire." A beam of pure light shot from the Vanguard, cutting through the void. For a moment, it was brighter than a sun. The swarm's heart, a sphere of living metal, shattered under the blast. Waves of energy rippled outward, throwing debris across light years. Cheers erupted through the fleet. The swarm fragments fell silent, drifting aimlessly. Thrax smiled for the first time in weeks. "It's over." But Reyes didn't celebrate. She stared at the readings, small pulses flickering in the debris field. "No," she said softly. "It's not over. It's splitting again, spreading smaller, deeper." The smiles faded. The swarm wasn't dead. It was changing. Reyes turned to her officers. "Signal every fleet. Pull back to defensive line Delta. Prepare fallback to core systems." Thrax looked at her, disbelief in his eyes. "You're retreating?" Reyes shook her head. "No. I'm preparing the next move." In the following days, chaos consumed the stars. Entire sectors went dark. Dozens of worlds were lost. But humanity didn't stop. They built new weapons, faster ships, smarter AIs. They shared every secret, every piece of knowledge with their allies. And slowly, very slowly, the galaxy began to fight smarter. One night, in the dim light of the war room, Thrax spoke quietly. "When this war is over," he said, "the galaxy will never see humans the same way again." Reyes smiled faintly. "They never did. We've always been underestimated. It's our favorite weapon." She turned back to the window, where countless battles lit up the sky. The war was far from over. But for the first time, the galaxy wasn't running anymore. It was fighting back. And at the center of it all stood humanity, scarred, relentless, unbreakable. The war had lasted for months. Entire constellations were gone. Billions were dead. And still, the swarm came, endless, relentless, unstoppable. Every time the galaxy struck, the swarm adapted. Every time it was wounded, it learned. The Alliance fleets were now shadows of what they once were. But humanity fought on. Even as their ships burned, even as worlds fell silent, the humans refused to retreat. They had seen extinction before. And they had learned one truth: as long as one human breathes, the fight isn't over. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Captain Reyes stood surrounded by broken screens and flickering lights. Ambassador Thrax was beside her, his face pale under the red glow of warning alarms. "Half the fleets are gone," Thrax said quietly. "The swarm is consuming the core systems. We cannot hold." Reyes looked at the star map. Half the galaxy was already covered in the dark red cloud. Her voice was calm, but her eyes told another story. "No. We can't hold forever. But we can choose how we fall." Thrax turned to her. "You mean to fight to the end?" Reyes smiled faintly. "To the very end." In the deep command chamber, the surviving leaders of the Alliance appeared as holograms, their faces weary but determined. Reyes spoke clearly. "The swarm's core intelligence is buried beneath the galactic plane, in a dead star system called Karath. That's where this ends." Gasps filled the room. Karath was a cursed place, a collapsed star surrounded by magnetic storms and black radiation. Thrax frowned. "No one has ever returned from that system." Reyes nodded. "Exactly. That's why it's hiding there." She zoomed the map. "We hit it with everything we have left. A final strike, not to survive, but to end it." Silence. Then one by one, every commander nodded. For the first time, there was no debate. No fear. Only resolve. Days later, the final armada gathered above a dying star. Thousands of ships, human, alien, machine, standing shoulder to shoulder in the blackness. They knew this might be their last dawn. On every channel, across 1,000 worlds, Captain Reyes' voice spoke. "This is humanity's last transmission. If you can hear me, remember this. We were not born to rule the stars. We were born to fight for them. If we fall today, let our fire light your way." Her words echoed through the galaxy. Even planets not part of the war stopped and listened. Farmers, miners, soldiers, they all looked to the sky and whispered the same thing. "Fight with them." Then, the fleet moved. The swarm appeared like a living storm, filling space from one horizon to the other, billions of fragments, merging into colossal shapes, each the size of a moon. Reyes gave one command. "All ships, advance." The void erupted. Lasers, plasma, kinetic fire, the stars themselves seemed to burn with fury. The Vanguard led the charge, its cannons glowing white-hot. Human ships dove through swarm formations, carving paths for their allies. Thrax could barely stand as the deck shook under explosions. "They are too many," he shouted. Reyes gritted her teeth. "Then we'll give them something to remember." She turned to her tactical officer. "Activate the Sol protocol." The officer froze. That will destroy the fleet." Reyes' voice softened. "I know." At the center of the fleet, massive energy cores began to hum, human-built fusion hearts, linked together in a chain across light years. It was humanity's last secret weapon, a weapon made not to conquer, but to end. The swarm sensed the danger and rushed forward, consuming ships as it came. One by one, the link nodes went dark. Thrax looked at her, horror in his eyes. "You'll kill everyone." Reyes placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, Ambassador. We'll save everyone else." She turned to the comms officer. "Transmit this message across the galaxy." The officer nodded. "Recording." Reyes looked into the camera. "This is Captain Reyes of Earth. To any who survive, remember us not as soldiers, but as the spark that refused to die. The galaxy is yours now. Keep it alive." She paused, then whispered, "For Earth. Activate." The sky turned white. The Sol protocol ignited, a chain reaction of collapsing stars and fused reactors. Light exploded across the void, swallowing the swarm's core, burning through every fragment, every signal, every trace of its existence. From 1,000 light-years away, worlds saw a new sunrise where darkness once lived. The humans had done it. The swarm was gone. But so were they. Weeks later, the galaxy was quiet. No more alarms. No more war. Ambassador Thrax survived, rescued by a Vidian ship just before the final blast. He looked out at the sky, where a new nebula now shimmered, glowing gold and blue, shaped like spreading wings. They called it the Dawn of Earth. Every species mourned the humans who had saved them. Monuments were built on 100 worlds. And every new fleet carried a single phrase painted on its hull. "We remember Earth." Thrax often visited the nebula. He would stand in silence and whisper, "You were called savages once, but you became our saviors." The stars above shimmered in reply, silent, eternal, alive. And though humanity was gone, their legacy burned brighter than any sun. Because sometimes, heroes don't live to see peace. They create it.